show is supposed to come to Apple TV Plus on Friday.
Yeah.
And now it's postponed, called The Savant.
The Savant. It was an Apple TV series. They do the weekly release format, so the first episode was going to drop this Friday. In fact, we had the Chicago exclusive interview with Jessica Chastain on the show earlier this week because, according to the plan, it was supposed to come out. Now, Apple just announced yesterday that they were postponing the release of The Savant with really no sort of a specific explanation as to why it was going to happen. I believe that their specific statement that they released, after careful consideration, we have made the decision to postpone The Savant. We appreciate your understanding and look forward to releasing the series at a future date. Not even we're pushing it back a month, we're pushing it back a week. It's just off the table right now, which is pretty surprising because, you know, we aired the interviews, we talked with the cast as if it was going to come out this Friday.
And so for our audience that may not be familiar, the savant is the person that kind of looks at the world of hate groups and domestic terrorism.
Yeah, and so Jessica Chastain kind of plays this expert who has to sort of infiltrate these hate groups online and does so by kind of pretending to be them. She creates these fake identities and kind of infiltrates these groups and gets in as part of the conversation in a way to kind of figure out what they're planning on doing so that they can kind of swoop in and stop acts of terrorism from happening. These are real people who really do this. And I spoke with Chastain about the sort of people that she had to speak with who really do this. She talked about how they are people who do not want recognition. They do not want thanks. All they want to do is stop these extremist groups. Now, the reason we're talking about this today is because Jessica Chastain just put out a statement that she led off with, while she does value her relationship with Apple, she respects them, she respects their decision to hold back on the release of Savant. She does not agree with the delay of the series. And you and I were talking during the break, and you know, the conversation came up with, you know, with the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk and the sort of surrounding violence. You look at what happened in Dallas today. If it's just not a good time to release something like this. And what she brought up in her statement was, she listed so many acts of violence that have happened in our country just within the last 12 months, basically saying if we're going by that, then in theory, there's no good time to release this series. Her statement was really interesting. She said, I've never shied away from difficult subjects, and while I wish this show wasn't so relevant, unfortunately it is. The Savant is about the heroes who work every day to stop violence before it happens, and honoring their courage feels more urgent than ever. While I respect Apple's decision to pause the release for now, she does not agree with it.
Let me ask you this, because you've had the opportunity to actually watch it versus, you know, our viewers, they've seen the trailer perhaps, but they haven't watched the entire thing. We often hear, you know, the statement, you know, art imitates life. Do you feel like after you've actually watched this that someone that may be in one of these groups, bad groups, would want to imitate some of what plays out, or maybe they would have the inner workings of how the people that solve these crimes think, and that's why they don't want to release it right now? Just looking at the other side of what
that's such a tough question, but you know, because there are always been. I mean, you look. There is a movie coming out on Friday called One Battle After Another with Leonardo DiCaprio, where he plays sort of an extremist who, you know, is kind of on the other side of this thing. You know, there's always sort of been that conversation about reality and art, and does one influence the other? And I've always been an advocator of, like, art should be allowed to be out there. You know, we can't be afraid of art. Art is a part of what we do. At the end of the day, the Savant very clearly has the line drawn. These people who do these things, these extremist movements, are the villains, and these are, you know, the sort of person that Jessica Chastain plays, these government officials. These are the American heroes who are doing their best to keep these acts of terrorism from happening. I really don't see, you know, anyone looking at the Savant and getting confused by the message. I really don't see anyone looking at how they are portraying these extremist groups and going, well, you know, I see their side of things. I just don't really see that perspective being, you know, coming from it.
Do you think that this is because we have seen these controversies come up? It's all, people would argue that it is art. Some people have argued that it's not, when we talk about Jimmy Kimmel Live and places and people like that. Do you think that there is this corporate hierarchy that is, you know, in some ways censoring the ability to carry on art, considering the times that we're living in.
I think if I had to be honest, I think it is more to your point. It's everyone is just being incredibly sensitive right now. And I think right now people are making sure that they're not caught in the crossfire of, you know, I think Apple is probably looking at what's going on with ABC and Disney right now and almost wanting to go, you know,
right,
I'm going to let you guys figure this out, and when the dust settles, then we'll come back. I really don't think this has anything to do with the content of the show. Like I said, when it finally does come out, I urge people to watch it, remember that this happened, and then come back and tell me whether you thought it was inappropriate for this show to come out. I think it's exactly what you're saying. I think it is them putting their pulse on, you know, the finger on the pulse of what's going on right now, and just saying, listen, what if we just held back for a minute? I really don't think that this show is going to be delayed indefinitely. I think when things settle down, if only for a moment, then they'll say, okay, we're back. Because you have to keep in mind, they paid a lot of money for all the promotional release to come out this Friday, which is at this point now, if you wait too long, all that money goes up in the air. So I really do think it's going to come out sooner rather than later. I think Chastain did a good job in being able to say I agree with them, but I respect their decision. But I think you sort of touched on it. I think it's just what's going on right now where they're saying, you know what, we're just going to hold back just for a moment.
I know you've been, you know, covering different stars and films and shows and everything, you know, for most of your career. Have you ever seen something like this before where, you know, maybe they produce something and they think, maybe this is not a good time? Is this a first?
Oh, yeah, no, this happens quite, it's happened quite a bit. The biggest example, honestly, would probably have to be 9/11. The amount of movies, even as something as silly as a Spider-Man trailer had to be pulled because it showed a helicopter being hung between the Twin Towers. You know, there was a movie called Collateral Damage with Arnold Schwarzenegger that had to be pushed back just because it featured the concept of terrorism. You know, there have been a lot of times where things have been pushed back, things have been delayed. There have been weird coincidences in television where, you know, something horrible happens in society and 2 days later, there just so happened to be a television episode that was going to air. And a lot of times the networks will come forward and say, listen, it's a weird coincidence, but it's not really something we want to play with right now, so we're going to hold back. So these things do happen. I think right now everyone is so hyper-focused on things being pulled off the air and things being put back on the air that we're all kind of laser focused, but it does happen a little bit more than you think it does.
It's a good point that you bring up where in some cases art does imitate life. We've had that instance happen several times with The Simpsons.
Exactly, Simpsons did it. Exactly right.
Which is a great example, and it still continued
I was
on.
going to say, we could do an entire show just on that.